Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. If you can please take your seat. Katya, take your seat. What's today? What's the date today?
October 29th.
I'm so off my game. What are you? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our board meeting for Monday, October 29. I'd like to call our meeting to order. But before we start our meeting, I would ask you if you kindly can stand up and we'll have a moment of silence for the victim of the Pittsburgh shooting. The hate crime took place on a weekend. Thank you. Please be seated. Before we start our meeting tonight, we have a special announcement. It's the Ottawa Police Service Community Equity Council. We launched about a half an hour ago in the other room, but now officially we'd like to, on behalf of the board, I would like to congratulate Chief Bordelot on the creation of the new Ottawa Police Service Community Equity Council. I also wanted to welcome the member of the new council. Also say thank you to some member who's still here, but some member who serve us as a member of Compact. Thank you so much for your contribution to our community and to the community relationship. Congratulations have been chosen among more than 100 applicants. The Ottawa Police Service Board is committed to hearing from the community. This allows us to build a relationship, get back and mobilize around specific issues. We have every confidence that this new council will strengthen and support the ongoing dialogue between the Indigenous, racialized and faith-based community and the Ottawa Police Service. And before I turn it over to Chief Bordelot, I'd like to welcome the three elderly, and I'd like to say thank you, John, for being part of a special event the other day at the police gala and bringing the fiddler with you that was added on. Thank you so much for being there, and I wish you brought the fiddler tonight too, because we can use one. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief Bordelot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think a lot of the thanks go to Deputy Chief Bell, who led the initiative. So thank you very much, Steve, for your work on this. And welcome to our new Community Equity Council member. I'll read your names, and if you can stand up to be acknowledged. So Hector Addison, Zahada Alolo, Huda Al-Sarraj, Maleka Yas, Teresa Edwards, Holden Egal, Gérard Etienne, Debbie Hoffman, Ralston King, Heidi Langille, Jalil Mahoujoud, Sevalien César Nidera Moussa, Excellent. And I also want to recognize our three elders, First Nations Elder Irene Compton, Inuit Elder Ripa Evick Carlton, and Métis Elder Joe McQuarrie. So welcome, look forward to working with you. J'ai hâte de travailler avec vous autres. C'est toute une aventure qu'on va avoir ensemble, and we know that trust and confidence in policing is a underlying theme of the work that we will do today, together. So we look forward to our journey together. Thank you so much, and congratulations. And I want to acknowledge Ketcha Peters and Robert Yip from our former Compact co-chairs, and who has helped us transition to the new Community Equity Council, and will help us going forward. Merci. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations to the new board, and we thank you for taking on such an honorable job helping the Ottawa Police Service. Thank you. With that, we'll start with our agenda. Confirmation of agenda that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirmed the agenda of the 29 October 2018. Is the agenda confirmed? Thank you. Confirmation of minute October 1st, 2018, that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirmed the minutes of the 1st October 2018 meeting. Okay, thank you. Declaration of interest. Inquiries. No? So item number 1, Chief's verbal report. We'll hold item number 1. Item number 2, the National Capital Area Crime Stopper semi-annual update. So we'll hear from Mr. McMullen, the President of the National Capital Area Crime Stopper. So we'll hold item number 2. Item number 3 is a background check fee structure. Chief's report. We have a presentation from our staff. We'll hold item 3. Item number 4. TELUS Communication Incorporation Wireless Service Contract. Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved a contract with TELUS Communication, Inc. for the wireless services for 3 years from 5 November 2018 until 5 November 2021 at approximately 3 years, cost of $2,862,000, including non-refundable taxes. And the item carried. Thank you. Item number 5 is the appointment of a special constable, Ottawa Police Service, that the Ottawa Police Service Board approve the appointment of the individual listed in Document 1 as a special constable pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Service Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment form. Thank you. Item number 6, reappointment of a special constable, Ottawa Police Service. Chief's report on this one, that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the reappointment of Gordon Jones as a special constable pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Service Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment form. Okay. Thank you. Item number 7 is the appointment of Special Constable Carleton University, that the Ottawa Police Service Board approve the reappointment of Michael Warner as Special Constable pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Service Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment form. Sure. Item number 8 is Complaints Report, Part 5, Police Service Act, 3rd quarter, that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Thank you. And Chief, I'd like to say thank you to the Executive Officer for taking on our advice and start reporting the trend with the 5 years in the report, and it's very well done. Thank you so much. So, item number 9 is report on SIU investigation. Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Received. Item 10, Legal Service Status Report, third quarter 2018, Deputy City Solicitor report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Item 11, Board Monitoring Requirement Status Report, third quarter 2018, the Executive Director's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Item 12 is Outstanding Board Inquiries in Motion, October 2018, Executive Director's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Item number 13 is Letter of Commendation, Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Thank you. So we'll go item number 1, and that's the Chief's verbal report. Chief.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Start off by indicating that we are investigating 2 shootings that happened this morning in the city's core. The first occurred on Carruthers Avenue at approximately 3:45 a.m. and resulted in the homicide of a man in his 20s. The second shooting occurred at approximately 7:30 a.m. on Gilmore Avenue near Percy. So our major crime and general investigators are working actively as we speak on those 2 incidents. This activity obviously is concerning to all of us. Over the last few months, we have refocused our efforts across the service on gun violence suppression, and we've seen an impact on the number of shootings as compared to the first few months of the year. But there are still too many. Our frontline officers and our covert units will continue to focus on our known offenders. We know that there's often a link between gun violence and drug trafficking. In fact, just last week, our drug unit, our tactical unit, guns and gangs, and our pivot team executed several search warrants. Their efforts resulted in the seizure of 4.5 kilos of cocaine, $125,000 in cash, and a semi-automatic handgun. 4 people were charged with trafficking offenses, the illegal possession of a firearm, and possession of proceeds of crime. And this year, we have already seized over 50 guns, and many more investigations are currently underway. And I thank the Chair for acknowledging the events in Pittsburgh. And that occurred on Saturday. 11 people were shot and killed, and many more were injured, including 4 police officers who came to stop the gunman. It's important that we all denounce this act of hate. These types of acts are despicable, but they can occur anywhere. What happened in Pittsburgh is a sad reminder of our need as a community and as a police service to be vigilant and ready to respond. It also highlights the importance of reporting all acts of hate and intolerance in our community. I've sent messages of support to Pittsburgh Police Chief on our service's behalf and that entire community. We also recognize the local impact of these types of tragedies, and we've reached out to our local Jewish community. Last evening, I had the honor of attending the Soloway Jewish Community Center to ensure that they knew that they had our full support and we stood shoulder to shoulder with them. As well, we have increased our presence at important religious institutions locally. Mr. Chair, the past couple of months have seen a busy time for our police service as we move to ensure the safety of our roads after the implementation of the new cannabis legislation. Our traffic services team has been instrumental in getting the word out about the dangers of driving high, both online through social media accounts and by interacting with drivers on our city streets. On the first day of the legalization of marijuana, they were out conducting spot checks. More than 2,900 vehicles were stopped during an October 18th mega ride check, and another 1,640 drivers were stopped during a roadside check on October 17th, 19th, and the 20th. These ride programs did not result in any impaired charges. We hope that this trend means that people are hearing the message. It's important that we adjust to the new legislation and that we remain focused about keeping our roads safe for all users. Other major jurisdictions that legalize cannabis have seen an increase in collisions on their roads, and we're working hard to ensure that that trend here does not happen through education and enforcement. Our human trafficking unit rescued 2 Ottawa area women from their traffickers earlier this week. As a result of a month-long investigation, the unit helped to get these women out of the trade they had been trapped in for years. Pivot members also assisted with the investigation in locating and arresting one of the traffickers. The unit continues to work with other police services to share information on targets. Investigators were recently part of a national initiative called Northern Spotlight, where 7 women were identified provincially, and the Ottawa Police Service assisted with the rescue of 3. This annual program combines the efforts of multiple police services and seeks out those victims of the human trafficking trade by offering them exit strategy and support services. I also want to thank all members who helped organize the 9th Annual Ottawa Police Services Gala that was held this past weekend at the Shaw Centre. And I especially want to thank our main speaker, Mr. Paul Doerr, on his inspirational message. It was a great night that helped raise a great deal of money for 3 local charities, and I want to acknowledge Inspectors Jim Ells and Sandy McLaren for the tremendous leadership that they exhibited in planning this gala, and we'll be pleased to report back the totals that were raised in the coming months. And I'd like to wrap up with 2 examples of the work our officers do that often go unnoticed. In August, Constables Michelle Berkvins and James Killeen responded to a situation where a refugee family that had traveled from Montreal to Ottawa but had nowhere to stay and very limited funds. The family, a woman and her 3 young children, were stranded, and it was late at night. Constables Berkvins and Killeen tried to find the family shelter to stay in, but were unable to locate any place. Then, out of their own pockets, they rented the family a room at a local motel to ensure that they had a place to stay and could be connected with social services in the morning. The next day, the family was able to get the help they needed. We only learned of the matter after the YMCA contacted us to thank those officers. And here's another example of the impact that our officers have from a letter we recently received. I just wanted to send a note of gratitude to Constables Shane Gregan and Kellen Moore, who attended my call. Their presence helped my sisters and I get out of an abusive situation peacefully. I know they were just doing their job, but I wanted to send a note to say thank you to the constables and to the Ottawa Police Service for their training, the assistance and professionalism, and also sensitivity. It was the first time I felt safe enough to be assertive and establish boundaries with this person who has been abusive to me my entire life. That was transformative for me. I finally feel like I have regained some power. Thank you for being there and for helping me do that. Mr. Chair, that's my verbal update, subject to any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief. Any question for the Chief? No? I see none, Chief. I'd just like to echo your about the gala and the great turnout we have and the great organization and really and the theme of tonight to thank all the first responder and city staff and the community for what they did in the last month during the tornadoes who hit our city last month. So again, I want to say thank you to you and to all the first responder and the city staff and the community volunteer who helped us to go through that time. Thank you. On the Chief's report, Chief. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce someone who is no stranger to us and been around, and we're grateful to have him back again, Mr. Richard McMullen, the President of National Capital Area Crime Stopper. He usually brings with him a group to cheer him on. I don't see the folks here tonight, so Richard, welcome again to the police board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight I am alone, unfortunately, or fortunately for me, but thanks for your continued support and your encouragement to have us come out and provide you with this semi-annual update. It's a great opportunity for us to reflect back on the initiatives and the good work that we've done over the last 6 months. So I'll give you just some of the highlights. Back in June, we held our annual general meeting, and at that time we were able to appoint our new vice president, no stranger to the Ottawa Police Service, Alan Burns, accepted that role. He's been volunteering with us for a number of years now. We've got a new secretary, and that's Miss Catherine Dupont. And a new board member, one of our youth volunteers, became an official board member, Elizabeth Callahan. And we were just pleased to see the support that our board provides. Obviously, they're sending their best regards as well. So just wanted to provide an update on that. We attended the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers annual training conference hosted this year in Hamilton, Ontario. And it was a chance for us to attend with some of our volunteer board members, Sergeant Wong, Constable Getz, and our assistant coordinator, Janice McClelland. And these are learning opportunities, great chances to share best practices, learn from other programs. And for us, I can tell you I was most proud, our youth volunteers were able to provide a presentation that was just wildly accepted as kind of the norm and the model to follow with youth engagement and engagement with the community. It can't just be about board folks and fellows with gray hair. It's got to be engaging with the community that we serve. And I can tell you firsthand that, one, I'm extremely proud of the youth volunteers that we have, but just the connections that they're able to make in the community, it's outstanding to see. And I was privileged to attend the OPS Gala on Saturday, and it was really rewarding to hear Paul Dewar speak about community and about youth engagement. And those are things that are obviously important and vital to Crime Stoppers and our efforts. During the conference, we were able to meet Greg McAleese, who's the founder of Crime Stoppers way back in 1976. He was a young detective with the Albuquerque, New Mexico Police and got the bright idea to form this partnership locally with police, media, and the community. And I'm proud to say that all these years later, it's thriving across the globe in over 100 countries. This was pretty powerful. So we're continuing to do very strong work. We're trending our tip results we've included. We're trending for about 5,000 tips again this year. Last year, as you may recall, was kind of a record number of tips for us. We never know what those tips are going to bring in, and the good outcomes through our law enforcement partners that those tips generate successful outcomes. And that's really what makes the program so compelling. Again, that community engagement for us is so important. We were pleased to be able to attend all of the Police Week events earlier this year. We continue to work with city councilors and different stakeholders across the region, attending their community safety days and other community events, whether it's a fun barbecue that they may be hosting. And being able to connect with the community is vital, certainly for our program. And it helps generate tips from the public and build that trust. Just like the police service need that, people need to feel trusted and safe, and that's the benefit of the Crime Stoppers program. Constable Getz was able to present during the After the Call event, hosted here at City Hall by Crime Prevention Ottawa. And it was interesting to see the different dynamics of the community engagement from law enforcement and volunteer organizations like ours that are able to go post-critical event and really connect and engage with the community. And of course, I'm reminded we're at pre-critical events, whether it's working at community housing authority residences, all sorts of different community engagement before something happens. And I think that continues to be beneficial for us. We had partners like Loblaws that supported us with Cram a Cruiser and Fill a Police Service Boat events for local food banks. We know that that's vital. And so through those events, we spread our 1-800 number and our service to the community, and they're able to help us. They helped us raise some money with community barbecues and such. We've attended the Navan Fair Parade again for the last many years. We're looking forward to attending 4 local Santa Claus parades in the upcoming weeks ahead. Our golf tournament helped raise over $19,000 that help fund our tip rewards in our program. We had over 100 golfers with just a spectacular day at golf. We filmed a crime scene reenactment for the first time in many, many years. As you know, there's video surveillance that helps our law enforcement partners, and we're able to solicit anonymous tips from the public with those images. This year we highlighted the fatal hit and run event that occurred taking Michael Moylan's life in the East End almost 5 years ago when we did the reenactment. And I was touched by the fact that his parents, Brian and Kathy, were supportive and in attendance as we filmed with our partner at CTV. They sort of made it happen, and it was impressive to see the hope, and we continue to solicit anonymous tips that may help resolve this terrible crime. Constable Getz was busy providing in-house training with many sections within OPS, and that's been quite beneficial. Again, sharing tip management strategies and such. That's been quite good. At our AGM, we signed a memo of understanding with Environment and Climate Change Canada. This is a national initiative to help protect federally protected wildlife and solicit anonymous tips from the public that can help that. Poaching is a serious crime, as is some of the other criminal activity around that, and it was impressive to see that. Media continues to be important for us. We generate a number of anonymous tips because of our social media. We still get about 17,000 page views, independent page views every month on our website. Our social media account climbs, but our traditional media partners as well contribute to that, and that's been beneficial. One of the things that we like to remind them and the public is that we never want to take credit for solving crimes. We know that we solve crime. Our law enforcement partners know that we've contributed to solving a crime, but we don't want to share those successes, unfortunately, because of the protection of the anonymous tipster. So while we appreciate it from time to time, it's better not to acknowledge us. So we're looking forward to Crime Prevention Week that's going to be upcoming in the next few weeks, and we'll be at all of those events with our Ottawa Police Service partners. And again, just a great partnership with the community and the police service. I can tell you, we are very fortunate when I look across the other programs across this province and across the country. I think we have the best relationship with our police service partners, our police service board, our municipal leadership, and all levels. It's really impressive to see, and so thank you for that. Thank you, Chief, for you and your team for supporting us during Police Week events and all the events that we're at, whether it's the Community Police Center officers or others. It's important to keep those relationships strong. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McMahon. Any question for this too? Thank you very much, sir. Chief?
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Richard again for his amazing leadership. The relationship is a good one, and that's largely in part to the board and the approach you've taken with your team. Just a couple of comments on your I really applaud your strategy around engaging youth because with this new generation, we need to be able to reach them. We need to get them to understand that they too can report crimes anonymously and in non-traditional ways. And so that's you are everywhere, which is awesome. And the other piece is, our focus has been on reducing violence in our communities and focusing on guns and drugs, and the two go hand in hand. And just looking at your stats, like in 2018 so far, you contributed to recovering $181,000 worth of drugs compared to $43,000 last year, and again 2 guns off our streets as a result of Crime Stoppers. So thank you very much, and our community is reaping the benefits of the tremendous work that you are doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you very much, Richard, for all you do. Thank you. On the item, folks, receive. Thank you. And now we'll go to item number 3, which is the background check fee structure, and we have a presentation from our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief, for the reminder that I kind of jumped my cue there. We'll one presentation back. When you said a speaker well known to the board, I just assumed you meant me, so jumped out of my chair. Thanks everybody. We're here tonight to provide an update to the board on the results of the consultation that we conducted in June and July on the proposal for a change in our background check fee prices. So we'll give you some context on the feedback we got from the consultations, and we'll also be asking the board tonight to approve an option for a fee, and the implementation would be January 1, 2019. To set the context for the board's decision, I'm just going to go through a couple of the high-level slides that we presented in May and June to give you a bit of background as you make your decision. What we find, and it continues to this day actually, is that employers and volunteer agencies are increasingly relying on background checks as a way to screen employees and volunteers. And the regulations around background checks, the sensitivity of them, has made this a very complex operation. And you can see that our volumes have almost doubled in the last 5 years. It's become a kind of a main focus of service that we offer through the police service, and you'll see as well that it's becoming a main source of cost for us. Here's kind of our customer base. We have 2/3 of the background checks are done for employment screening purposes. About 1/3 are for volunteers. And when we look at the data, we aren't always able to identify exactly who the employers are. But when they're grouped together, we can see that the top 5 employers are related to the taxi and ride-sharing industry, the area universities, area school boards, hospitals, and daycares. So that's our primary client on the employment side. And the range of volunteer organizations is pretty much what you'd expect. We see a wide range of sports activities and volunteering in smaller nonprofit organizations. When it comes to who or what age are applicants, 88% of them are adults, 10% are youth, and the remaining 2% are senior citizens. We've done some work on the cost of background checks. So this is kind of an overview to show you that it's about a $4.8 million expense item in our budget. And if you narrow that down to a per transaction cost, it's $63. So gives you a feel for the kind of cost recovery we need in order to balance out our budget. Here's our current fee structure now, and we've lined it up around the 3 levels of LEARN guidelines. The LEARN guidelines are something that police services in Ontario use to try and to identify a common set of background checks that we manage through the guidelines that the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police has helped us to develop. So at a level 1 background check, on the employment side, we charge $50, and you'll see that throughout our current fee structure, volunteers pay $0. There's a second level of background check called a criminal records and judicial matters check. it is $15, and that's a decision that was made by the board about 7 years ago. The volunteer pays $0 for that check. The level 3 check, you'll see from the volume numbers, that is the most sought after check. It is for folks who work in areas where their employment or their volunteer work puts them in close contact with vulnerable individuals, and that might be children or senior citizens, disabled adults, or patients in a hospital where vulnerability is in play. That charge, if you're an employee, that's a $15 charge. Again, the board set that about 7 years ago to recognize the importance of the vulnerable sector, and a volunteer pays $0. We have 2 other charges that come into play depending on circumstances. If you're a counter customer and you want, in the past, if you wanted 1-day turnaround, you paid an express surcharge like the passport office office charges, and it was $42. If you're out of jurisdiction, meaning you're outside the City of Ottawa boundaries, there's a surcharge of $42. Most of the folks who take advantage of that are actually our partners in Gatineau across the river. Here's what we put together in terms of full cost recovery options, and that was our goal. Starting in the 2017-2018 budget, we identified that it would be important to fully recover the cost of background checks in order to keep our budget in the 2% range. So we added $2.4 million worth of revenue associated with these checks to fully recover costs, and that's a common. It's called a user fee approach in municipal and policing policy, and it ensures that the cost of the background check is borne by the person who will use it and not generally by the taxpayer. So each of these options ensures, with the exception of the last one, which I'll just chat about, but ensures that we recover the full cost of the background check service, but it does offer a different balance in each one. For example, in option A, we see that the volunteer check stays at $0. In order to recover full cost, though, then the fee for the employment check rises to $90. So in each of those options, then we see the volunteer starting to pay a bit more. That reduces the amount for the employment check. And at the end of the day, in that option F, we looked at some of the comparable types of market rates, as it were, for police services such as York or Durham, what their range of fees were, and it was in the range of $50. But in order to recover full cost, we would need to select one of options A to E. So we took those out to public consultation, as we told the board we would, and we did it through a survey. There were 7 questions in the survey, and it was to get people's feel for their view of those options. It was posted online for about 2 to 3 weeks. We had 3,000 surveys, roughly 3,000 surveys were returned. They were tweeted out. We sent links to our primary partners so that people would be aware of the proposed changes. And here's what we learned from the public. 70% of the respondents didn't support full cost recovery for all applicants. Many, about the same number, didn't think that volunteers should pay any portion of the cost, therefore you would leave them at $0. Less than 10% felt there should be exemptions for students or seniors, and 38% felt that employees should pay the full cost, including the volunteer portion. Other respondents, or a section of the respondents, felt that the city and taxpayers or other levels of government or the police service should cover the cost of the fees. So quite a range of opinions. When we applied, when we summed up the support for the options, here's how they ranked. A status quo option where the fee for the volunteer is $0 and the fee for someone seeking an employment check is $90. That was the one that had the highest ranking, and that meant that 64% of the respondents ranked that as their first choice. The second choice was where the volunteer paid $10 and the employee pays $85. That was only 13%, though, support for that. So you can see after option A, the support drops quite significantly. Less than 8% then for option D, less than 6% for option E. So what we've done then is structure the recommendations based on, and this is just taken right from the report, we structured the recommendations based on the input from the community. So we've recommended that the board adopt one of the full cost recovery options. That there are 2 then that had some support. One, tremendous support for the volunteer to stay at $0 and the employee to pay $90. Some support for the volunteer to pay $10 and for the employee to pay $85. We also identified a status quo option just to leave things as they are. However, that option won't recover full cost. It would leave a $2.4 million budget impact. So, Mr. Chair, we've In terms of implementation, what we've outlined in the report is that we would have a January 1st implementation that will kind of align with our budget year. It does increase the 2018 year-end deficit by about 0.4 million. That's the amount of revenue that would be raised if we implemented on November 1st. But we think it's important that we have time to communicate to all our stakeholders and to explain the rationale behind the changes that the board decides on tonight. And we'll be happy to take any questions. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you very much, Director General, for I did receive some communication from some of our councillor colleagues, and obviously they saw the report online and they have their, so I will relay their message after, but I think we have a question from the Vice Chair. But before I turn to the Vice Chair, you said the other area, they go 50-50, York region and other. Is that how, is that just one service does it, or more than one of the big 12? I'm just interested in
Yes, Mr. Chair. We talked about this in a bit more detail in May. If I look at the level 3 check, the one that is used the most, for example, on the employment side, York, Toronto, and Durham are $50. Peel, London, and Niagara are $45. So they're in the $45 to $50 range. When it comes to the volunteer in the level 3 check, Toronto, York, and Durham are York and Durham are roughly $20. Toronto, London, and Niagara are $15. So in those cases, the volunteer is paying something in those regions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. I think it's a great report, and I realize how difficult it has been because I know the competing challenges, and in fact I have that same competition going on in my mind because I certainly support full cost recovery, but at the same time I support not charging volunteers. So the two questions I had. One was, I know one of the pieces of correspondence we got, it was suggested that we look at charging instead of the volunteers, the organizations who could then give a voucher to the individuals so they would be able to go and get a free check done. Is that something that was looked at all, and was it discarded?
Mr. Chair, we didn't look at who to charge, but there's nothing that prohibits or creates a barrier for an organization giving a chit to a volunteer to cover any cost. We've seen that in other programs that we operated in the crime-free multi-housing program, for example. The apartment owner covers the cost of the background check for the resident. So we could set up a chit system. There's no problem with that, but it wasn't one that we explored.
Right. Okay. And in line with that, what I'm thinking of that, because that would then accomplish that the volunteers themselves aren't handing it out, but the organizations, there would be a cost to them, which may or may not be an issue, whether they could recover that in funding they receive. Which then takes me to the other thing is that where I support full cost recovery, we are going beyond full cost recovery with respect to the employment ones, and therefore I'm just wondering, it's a thought process, it would be helpful if we identified that and went to the city as a line item and said, this is what it would take so that we have cost recovery and keep the volunteers at a level of zero without further encouraging. And I know that if we go into a deficit by not doing that, the city picks it up one way or the other, but I think this is more transparent and we're directly identifying to them the cost of maintaining full cost recovery and volunteer checks being free.
Mr. Chair, that's a number that we can restate that way. However the board chooses to present the expense and the revenue, we can certainly provide that kind of analysis so that it's clear what the volunteer portion is.
So, Deborah, I think it's fair to say you and I wouldn't be long enough around this table to talk about this, as a history keep coming back every so often, and every board almost try to find a compromise solution, and we always fail to really to get what we. So I know staff looking for cost recovery, and at the same time we don't want to impose on a volunteer. But the fact is, sometimes if we think about it, the $90 record check, whether a new Canadian or marginalized community or student to some degree, and some of them they have 2 or 3 jobs. This is going to be a little bit hefty on them to be able to get record check, because right now, no matter where you work, they don't accept the same record check. Each company wants their own. And I know this coming from the RCMP, but have you ever talked to the RCMP? Like if a young person working at McDonald's and they want to work at Burger King, do they have to have a different record check, or that could be used in those small business? I'm just wondering.
Generally, Mr. Chair, when we provide a record check, it is related to a specific job, but the decision about what to accept is with the employer. So, if you look at, for example, security checks that are done for employment in the federal government, depending on the level, they're good for 5 to 10 years. So, and it's an area of discretion. If an employer decided that they would accept an employment check that was done 12 weeks earlier for another employer, that's up to them. We perform the check based on the employment information that's given us, so that we're certain that we can, if it's for the vulnerable sector, that we're clear on the kind of duties and responsibilities when the volunteer is checked or the employee is checked in the files. But there's no regulation that says what the employer can accept. If they can decide to accept a background check from, in the case of a volunteer, for example, the volunteer community might decide that they will accept background checks that are 2 years old. There isn't a regulation that says that it must be current. I think people think that that's a safe practice, but it's not a dictated practice.
You see the challenge we have, and I heard from some of my colleagues on council as well. The challenge is some organization, they can afford to perhaps pay the $10 for their volunteer, and some might be they can't or vulnerable, but this city is built on volunteer. We strive to have those volunteer every section of the city helping us, and I think that's what always the struggle to. I understand we ask you to go for cost recovery, and now we're saying is a little bit steep in one way or another, but nevertheless we always struggle with that decision. Every 5 years comes in once, and I'm not sure who's going to be around for the next 5 years to deal with it, but so we have a decision to make, folks. So we have the option on the front of us, and as you heard the Director General, I believe option 1 is the one we'll go with the full recovery, and we'll keep the volunteer exempt. So
that's the help line up and illuminate the decision.
Right. Lynn, did you turn the light off on us?
Energy saving.
Okay, thank you. So option 1 is a full cost recovery. Volunteer will pay 0. Under this option, volunteer check remain free, and full cost of the background check service be borne by those seeking employment checks who pay $90. So you move option number 1. All in favor of option 1? No, option 1. Okay, so with that we... okay. So the motion is moved by Member Smallwood that the board adopt one of the full cost recovery option one outlined in the report for implementation on January 1st, 2019. And we all carry that item. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, staff. And with that, we'll go. I need a motion to move in camera. Moved by Member Smallwood. Thank you very much, folks, and have a good evening.